Hello, everyone. This is the second lesson relating to our topic, the impact of pandemics, the essay. We're going to focus today on how to write the second paragraph of a thematic essay. Now, if you're listening to this video instruction and you did not, I repeat that, did not listen to my first video instruction on how to write an introduction paragraph, do not listen to this one. Simply stop it and go back to the Google Classroom to find my lesson on how to write the introduction paragraph. It doesn't make sense to focus on a second paragraph when you didn't write the first, okay? So now, getting back to this lesson, the second paragraph of a thematic essay, we're still focusing on the same inquiry question. How did the struggle to deal with pandemics shape our society? In your thesis statement, you had to take a position. You had to say that the struggle to deal with pandemics either shaped our society for the worse or for the better, or however you described it. Once you're at that stage, you want to focus on one or more sources, okay, that support your position regarding the thesis statement. Now, remember, in terms of this whole activity, okay, to write your essay, you have multiple resources. You have the historical thinking packet, which is right here. Everybody knows all the table of contents, all the information, all the articles and documents that we looked at. You also have all the multimedia videos, which are all right here, and the links are attached to everything relating to the historical packet. All the videos that we saw are here as well, even the timeline about the different pandemics. So there are multiple sources to look at in order to get information. And of course, you have the bubble map, which we started even before the introductory paragraph. The bubble map has all the information that you answered in your own words and all the evidence that you derived from all the sources. So you have multiple information and materials in order to help to the essay. And of course, okay, you could also research your own information. Whenever you're writing an essay, especially one where you're not doing it within a school setting for a test or an exam, you have time to do your own research. Make sure you do that. Now, getting back to the second paragraph. The first sentence in the second paragraph focuses on one or more sources that supports your thesis statement. So we're actually going to I'm going to work backwards for this. I'm going to pretend that I'm working on the first paragraph, the first sentence specifically, my thesis statement. And I'm going to create a thesis statement. Let's say my thesis statement is as follows. So the inquiry question is, how did the struggle to deal with pandemics shape our society? I'm going to, as we mentioned in the previous video about the introductory paragraph, I'm going to restate the question in my thesis statement. So let me do that now. The struggle to deal with pandemics shaped our society for the better, period. Although there were many deaths and tragedies relating to the pandemics of the past and the current pandemic, we as a society were able to persevere and improve in many aspects of our civilization, period. So in this thesis statement, I took the position that things were for the better. That's my thesis statement. Using that idea of that things were for the better, if I go back to my body paragraph, now I would focus on one or more sources that support the idea that things were for the better. So what I do is I will go back to my historical packet, and let's say I want to look at the first lesson, which deals with perspective. I would click on that lesson. I look over the information that I learned, okay? All the reading material that we did. I would look at the information regarding the Spanish flu. And I could use that video, which I already have here, look over the information in the video and see which set of facts support that position. Okay? I'm not going to go through the whole video, but that is up to you to decide. Let's say in your research you realize, wait a minute, there's not really much here in the video with the Spanish flu that supports my position that things were for the better. So I will look at another article or another video which supports that. Let's say I go back to the same table of contents. And yes, this is a long process, but that's why we're here. We want to learn different things. Let's say I want to focus on the annotating sources. Now, in this lesson, if you remember, we saw the image of the flags of our fathers and the healthcare workers. This shows evidence, the healthcare workers, that despite the problems with the pandemics, people were able to unite together. So I could use this lesson, sourcing and annotating, to support my position. So if I go back to the second paragraph, I would simply type this or voice type it. In lesson 4 of the historical thinking packet, we have a visual representation of healthcare workers uniting to fight the pandemic. Period. This image reflects upon the fact that even though we as a society could be dealing with hardships, there's evidence that we could come together and work together to solve a common goal. Period. Now, that's my statement. My evidence, the second sentence in that states, cite evidence from that source, a statement, a quote, or a line. Simply stated, the political cartoon showcases healthcare workers uniting together in a symbolic gesture to fight the coronavirus. There is various evidence in that political cartoon that shows that despite the dangers of COVID-19, these healthcare workers are still willing to risk their lives and unite to fight a common enemy, period. So now I understand I know a lot more about this information than you do, but I'm just giving you a segue as to how you could use the information in the different sources that were given to help create your essay, formulate your essay, I should say. Okay? Now, explaining the evidence. If I go back to that source, we have the political cartoon. We also have the information about Governor Andrew Cuomo. Should he be considered a hero or a villain as a result of his cause to fight the pandemic in New York City? And we also had an article in here which talks about what he did during the time that we were all, in lockdown, specifically on March 16th. I'm not going to read the whole article again, but as you read the article, it showcases what he encouraged us to do. So if I go back here, in that same lesson, we learned that Governor Andrew Cuomo was able to unite all New Yorkers in following certain rules and conditions to keep our state safe, period. He was able to convince everyone to follow the rules of wearing masks, staying at home if you are not an essential worker, and make sure that we look out for each other, period. And of course, you have to correct any grammatical mistakes. And don't make this. correcting my mistakes, and then continue. Now I would go back into the information to find more information relating to my position that the pandemic made us unite together and improve things. I could also find information from the videos, as I mentioned. Okay? If we remember when we looked at the video relating to the Black Death, I'm going to play this video. I'm going to forward the video to a certain part.
Dear Tim and Moby,
I'm going to go to about, let's see,
something else, like the anthrax bacteria, a viral disease like
oh. Yes, here, right here, where it talks about social structure. Remember how they talked about how a lot of people died, but it helped change the social structure.
bubonic plague. Whatever the cause, the Black Death changed history. The pandemic scared people so much the whole social order broke down. Graves filled up so fast that bodies were left unburied for days. In a panic, people would blame minorities and foreigners for spreading the plague, with bloody results. People rejected the absolute authority of the church, and even class hierarchies began to break down. So many people died that there was hardly anyone left to work the fields. Because of this, peasants were eventually able to demand more rights and more money.
Stop right there. So even though the Black Death caused many tragedies, the very fact that peasants, people who were considered quote unquote the lower class, were able to eventually demand more rights and more money, I would argue, and from my perspective, that that's a good thing. No longer could people who were considered poor or lower class could be taken advantage of. Okay, so I would include that in that argument. Okay, I would, in terms of if I was writing this, I would say this. Also, in the Brain Pop video, which focuses on the Black Death, we learned that peasants, as the result of the plague, became more valuable because there were less workers to work the fields, period. Therefore, they were able to ask for more money and demand more rights, period. From my perspective, I would consider that a good thing, even despite the horrors of the Black Death, period. So, did you see how I looked at information from one of the sources? In this case, it was a video, and I was able to get information from that and then be able to include that in my essay, okay? Or the second paragraph. So, this is what you need to do as you're building up your work. This sentence focuses on external connections. That means information that you do not know, or not, I should say not know, but information that was not included in any of the sources that were given. So not in any of the articles or any of the videos. This part I always say is optional, depending on how much you know of a topic of an essay. But since the essay is focused on pandemics, and I assume everybody knows a whole lot about the coronavirus, there's a lot of outside information that was not included in the historical packet that you should be able to include. Even if you want to include your own personal testimonies about your own experiences dealing with this. Okay? So this is how we're going to do the second paragraph essay. We're going to work on it in class. The students who are working on it remotely, we will also work on it. Please post any questions or concerns on the stream, and the students I'll be seeing in class, feel free to ask me any questions at any time. Thank you very much.